Hello, everyone. Hi. All right, so I think it's about time to get started. Welcome to the Champion Innovations in Child-Centered Learning webinar hosted by 100 and Montessori Global Education. My name is Jamie Lee, and I'm the Education Design Specialist at 100, and I will be your host for today. So this webinar is the launch of our Spotlight Report project we conducted in collaboration with Montessori Global Education, which is a research project that aimed to look for education innovations working on child-centered learning. Today, we will be joined by some of the superstar innovations who were selected for the Spotlight project out of over 212 innovations that were submitted. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar will be recorded, so don't worry if you miss anything, you will get the recording after the webinar. And also there will be some time for a Q&A at the end of the panel. So you can feel free to put your questions in the chat, and there are 100 team members also there who can answer your questions, but we can also bring your questions to the panelists after the panel discussion. All right, so now I will hand it over to Karen Chetwood, the CEO of Montessori Global Education, who will introduce the project and facilitate the panel discussion. Welcome, Karen.
Amy, thank you very much indeed. Welcome to everybody, and we are thrilled to be here as Montessori Global Education. Megan and I were reflecting just a few moments ago on how long it's perhaps felt that this project has been live, but how exciting it's been. And we're so thrilled that the innovators, many of whom are on the call today, and the three that we will speak to today, have had such an impact on us as an organisation, and we hope the wider community. Child-centred learning is for everybody. We absolutely hope that the next steps after this project, that we hopefully all of our people on the screen inspire us to start looking for more child-centred opportunities and to broaden the reach for innovation in this field. We think that all of the innovators have done marvellous work. Some of them are relatively new to the sector, some of them have been doing it for a very long time, and we're thrilled to support all of them long into the future. It's my pleasure to facilitate today and to welcome colleagues on the panel, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves one by one. The screen that you can see gives some wonderful reminders as to who they are, and I'll start at the end actually. So Ron, if you could introduce yourself first, please. Curiosity Learning is a wonderful, wonderful project that we've been introduced to, and we'd like to hear from you today. Please introduce yourself, Ron.
Of course. Good afternoon. My name is Ron. I'm currently based in Lisbon, Portugal. And I enjoy learning. That's the essence of it. I enjoyed it since I was a kid, and I felt a bit of a I'll keep it short. I'm running Curiosity Learning. What we do essentially is support young people in setting up and running curiosity clubs, and these are spaces where you can learn anything you're curious about by creating projects together. That's the essence, and I'd be happy to say a bit more later down the line.
Ron, thank you so much. Monal, please. If we can hear from our colleagues at Canopy Nepal, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Monal, and I'm from Nepal. I've been working in this piece of education through Canopy for the last 7 years. And essentially what we do at Canopy is help reduce the dropout rates of students in Nepal. I'll talk a little bit more about why and how we chose that approach. But one of the things that we do is we run a storytelling program called Katha Buno, which literally translates to weaving stories. So we help students be creative, critical, self-expressive, all skills that are kind of shunned in schools in Nepal. And we use it with the simplest form of creation, which is stories. It's things that we say every day, it's things that surround us, and we help students from a really young age, about the age of 11, to start telling their own stories, whether fictional or non-fictional. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. And our colleagues from Giddy2School.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Please confirm you can hear me. Yeah, thank you. My name is Itsunodo. I'm from Nigeria, and the way I like to put it, I serve the team at Giddy2School Nigeria, a non-profit organization that is passionate about bridging the gap of the out of school indexes that we currently have. We do that through 4 thematic projects in the grassroots communities across the national levels with different individual stakeholders and partners, organizations as well. We have our impacts as well as our stories. Because this is a short introduction, I'm going to keep it at that. Looking forward to the panel, Kyra. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you to the 3 panelists. And yes, just a little bit of information about their projects, which you'll learn more about as we move through this session today. But 3 completely different projects as well. And that just gives the audience a sense of the scope and scale that we were thrilled to see through this innovation call. So I'm going to start today and ask the biggest question: what does child-centered learning mean to you? And I'll turn this over to our 3 panelists. By all means, please take your time, but let's hear from you. What is it that child-centered learning means? How important is it? Ron, can we come to you first?
Yeah, sounds good. So to me, child-centered learning is kind of in its name, like putting the child in the center of their learning. And that means really they direct, similar to self-directed learning, they direct, okay, what are the things that I'm interested in? What are the things I'm curious about? And then that's how they learn. They learn with the things that they want and that they're the center of their learning rather than a curriculum or a teacher or grades. It really puts the focus on, I guess, part of it also, the human aspect of it. Yeah, putting the child in the center of the learning.
If I ask colleagues, our other 2 panelists from Giddy2School and Canopy, by all means, put your cameras on, that's fine. Does that chime with you as well?
Definitely, but I think I would like to add one more layer of child-centered learning that we focus on is we really focus on the idea that one shoe does not fit all. So whenever we're in the field, when we're working with students, one of the core components of the work that we do is the pre-assessment of the students. And we've made sure that we build the curriculum in such a way that it is compatible to students across different learning levels. Because at the end of the day, when we're working with children, they are the priority, like meeting your goal as an organization. Taking things for your report is not the priority. It is for their learning. It is for their understanding. So one thing that we really focus on is creating a pre-assessment system that is not a test that we do, but just an understanding of, okay, where are these students leveled at when they're learning? How do they learn? What do they prioritize? What motivates them? Do they work on positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement? And I think understanding that is what then allows us to become child-centered, because at the end of the day, that is the goal. Yeah.
Evolution, isn't there? There's a learning happening all the time. Okay, let's bring in Giddy2School, please.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Wonderful idea there, Ron and Mona. Thank you for sharing those beautiful points. I'd also like to add to that. That's, of course, there are no one-size-fits-all approach, but there is something that should be, or that must be at the hand or at the back of the mind of everyone that is innovating solutions for young people or children across all levels. And it's that the children have to be at the center of the learning for it to be child-centered. So it doesn't have to be like the era of the time when the teacher is, the alpha and the omega, whatever it is I say stands. So it's more like we are looking at it from the lens of what do you need? How can we make you better? Can we meet you right where you are? Which, occurs a lot of times when we're dealing with children because like Mona said, assessment. You have to assess the kids to know where they are. And then that's when you can know how to, innovate. So what do they need? How can I come in? And I bring a bit of a background in education pedagogy. So I kind of like have some ideas around different theories around pedagogies, talking about the Montessori method, talking about the constructivist approach of pedagogy to education, the Reggio Emilia approach, the John Dewey's experiential learning, and all of that. So we have to be able to, as educators, know what each of these approaches bring to the table. How can we adapt it to what the child needs? How can we bring it to the current trends that's going on so that children that we are teaching are relevant to solve the problems of today and the problems of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
You. Everybody I sense, and even our audience, would have been nodding at the ideas of prioritizing children in whatever shape and form that comes out as. And many of you have talked about assessment, actually, in some shape, that needing to identify the needs of children in order to focus on child-centered learning. Could I ask a broad question to all of you? What do you see as the challenges? Why is that? Why is that something that we reach for, that we ask to achieve? Why is that not there now?
Yeah, I think, can I go first?
Of course.
All right, all right. So we're looking at how what is not there. Um, so I'm going to be talking specifically to my context. And in a lot of times I look at teachers' professional development, right? Because from as someone who has been in the classroom, who is in the classroom, we understand things from a teacher point of view, perspectives. And then if you talk about how many teachers, because talking based on statistics, over 60% of teachers around this part of the world actually do not have the teacher professional development that they need, the training that they need to perform to optimum. So it's not far-fetched that there's a common saying around here in Nigeria that a nation cannot rise above the quality of its teachers. It's very profound. So what the kids get, what the students learn, to what extent they learn, depends on how the qualitative exposure and experiences of the teachers. So to an extent, I can say that yes, this might not be totally true, but to an extent, the outcome that we see in learners speaks volume about the quality of the teachers. So before we even start to talk about, oh, students need to learn a certain way, they need to be taught a certain way, we need to look at the teachers that are teaching them. What exactly do they know? How can we help them? Because if they don't know what they're supposed to do in the classroom, then the students or the children are going to be at the mercy of whatever it is they bring to them. So I'll allow either Ron or Mona to add to that.
Thank you. Yes, let's add to that. Thank you so much.
And adding on to that, this is a very contextual thing, but it's very important for us to understand that we exist in this structure and that we need to kind of change the narration of the structure, is that the role of a teacher in Nepal is not a respected role. Every teacher that we see in government schools, when we go and ask them why you became a teacher, they are a teacher because nothing else worked out for them. So it's the last career path that they chose, which means that they have no motivation. They're just doing this simply because they needed to earn for their family, and this was the easiest, quote unquote, the easiest role that they could get. And what this means is that there's no motivation, there's no skill set, and there's no priority to kind of do the work the way that it's supposed to be. And I'm not talking about 100% of the teachers, but it is the reality for 80%, which is the majority. And which is why I think the way that we work is we have to work from the ground level, from the down up approach, is because the groundwork is where the intervention is needed at the moment. Not saying that the policy is amazing, but it's such a deep-rooted problem that we have to go from the bottom-up approach as well. But yeah, culture matters a lot, the context that we are currently situated in.
Thank you. Thank you. Ron, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask you also to just reflect perhaps on your own experience and how that has also shaped perhaps your view of the child-centered position. So please, let's hear from you.
I didn't fully understand the question.
So following on from colleagues on the screen, so let's think about those broader challenges. What is it then that's not allowing us to have that complete focus on child-centered? We know that we all align on that with lots of nodding on the screen. So let's take that first, Ron.
Yeah, I think the when it comes to child-centered assessment, so to speak, of like um assessing the child holistically rather than just the quality of work that is being produced. Um, I think it's really tricky. Like there are tools out there, and I think some of them are part of the report. I'm going to look more into those for sure. But assessing a grade, getting a grade from a piece of work is much easier to do. And I think that's a big reason that that's the status quo. It's much easier. And it's also something that if you're looking at the next step after uh, ch being a child, or like maybe a few steps after like university, they want an easy way to then to see, okay, which ones should we accept, which ones should we not. If they get a portfolio with a report about the children, they're not going to read all the portfolios of everyone, unfortunately. But it makes sense. So I think um, the to me, the way I see it, the why of why it's tricky, a big reason is this. I do completely agree with the other rest of the people on the screen as well, like that it's very context specific. In different places, it's very different. Um, but that's my 2 cents.
You, Ron. Let's stick on context then. So, Ron, would you say that your innovation has been created from your context? Is it relevant to you from your own experiences?
Yeah, so my innovation started when I was in high school. So I was when I was 17, and was really frustrated with the way things were running. And I thought, okay, what can I do as a student? And then I tried, and it's from then we still keeping true to that. Okay, we're not building a program for teachers, but for students to run for other students, because there are a lot of frustrated students that want to have a better education, want to learn in a different way, more child-centered. But most or a lot of the things that are run are for teachers or for schools, when in reality, students really want this change. So why not let them bring it on?
That was the inspiration behind it. Do you think that the children, the students, your colleagues, your counterparts, were they aware that that's what they were looking for, or did they just want something else?
If they were aware that they were looking for child-centered learning? I don't know. I think a lot of different people want different. A lot of people are saying we need educational change, but
Yeah.
each person has their own little twist on how that change should look like. Whether that's focusing on teaching better teachers, whether that's focusing on better learning strategies, child-centered. So I don't think everyone is aligned with our vision on how we think it should change, but those who are able to join.
Many of whom are here today. Yes. Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Colleagues on the screen, from your own experience with your innovation, so Ron's came very much from his experience. Is that the same for Giddy2School or Canopy Nepal?
Definitely. We're a very young organization, and by that I mean we're a very young team. Most of our team members are currently studying, pursuing their undergraduate. The organization was founded when the founder was just finishing high school. So we come from that area of empathy, that we've been through it, and we've been through that frustration of like, let us ask a question without being scolded in the classroom. Let us express ourselves. Like, why are we being scolded at just for questioning the discussion that is happening? But again, I think for us, it was also important to understand what the students in public schools were also doing, because a lot of us came from a private school learning background, and there's a massive gap of private and public education in Nepal. So I think that was also very important to understand, which is why before we even stepped foot into starting an institution, we actually had the co-founders actually went and taught in government schools as volunteer teachers to get an idea of like, okay, I had that frustration, but do these students relate to what I went through or not? So I think that was also important, because sometimes our personal biases can create amazing solutions, but does it fit the actual problem that is there? I think that is a cross verification that was needed when we started.
Thank you. Let's hear about Giddy2School's origins.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing that, Mona and Ron. For me, I'd say that um, Giddy2School actually came out of I can't turn my eyes off, right? Like I can't just look away. I'm deeply passionate about quality education, and the fact that I get educated made a lot of difference for me. personally, it's opened a lot of doors for me in terms of a personal, professional, achievement. And, hearing that every year, pre-COVID, 16 million children and youths are out of school. And even those that were in school did not, that education did not amount to much for them in terms of a dead curriculum that doesn't speak to the current trends of what the world needs, the 21st century skills and requirements. And then you hear people say, out of 10, you hear 6, 7 people tell you that education is a scam, right? And you can't blame them because they're not seeing the dividends of, you just asked me to waste 12, 20 years in school. And then after that, I still have to get my papers to start looking for a job. It doesn't make sense, So the jobs should be there waiting for me after I'm out of school. But then I've also attended a lot of, education job fairs where the employers are saying, we're frustrated. These people cannot, work in the system. They don't have the skills that we need. They don't have the grit that we need. They don't have the tenacity that, can help them in the work tough. And then you, as an education innovator, you sit back because there's a lot of hemorrhaging veins that you have to bandage. And then you have to pick, just like what Mona said, you have to really pick your tough. Maybe it was Ron that was saying it, or maybe Mona can't really pinpoint that you need to decide because there are a plethora of problems. Are you solving your problem from a student point of view? Are you solving this problem from a teacher's point of view? Because trust me, there are a lot of problems to go around. Are you looking at education policy? Are you looking at education financing? Are you looking at stakeholders engagement? Because that's also a big part of parents need to know that they play a big role in getting their words of their children to school. So at the time, I've always known because currently this is like my 6th academic fellowship, right? And the first question you ask is, what is the problem, right? Needs assessment. So we did a needs assessment and we saw that the number of learners that are actually suffering outweighs the number of, in terms of impact when you want to throw your weight to where the biggest weight should be. Where should we throw that? So where we can do something immediately, like make impact immediately, is on the perspective of standing on the point of, oh yeah, we can innovate and design something for the learners, rather than waiting for some platform to be handed over to you to change things via education policy or education financing. Of course, you do not have the money, right? So we decided, why not, innovate and do something that's help young people to upskill, to gain quality education and useful skills. So they're useful when they finish their school. They get the skills that they need to get to empower themselves. While we also are pushing an upfront to make sure that the education policy we have is all inclusive. And then we get more people to the table and then look at what's working from the grassroots, what's not working. And then we can design a context-specific solution to every community based on, co-jointed solutions and deliberations. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
As the drivers that you've all shared there, your incentive, the thing that's made you do it, this is personal, isn't it? There's a lot of personal feeling. And I think from looking at the whole innovation application stage, for so many people, that will be chiming with our audience today. And that not only is necessary when you're faced with challenge after challenge, I'm sure, but actually it keeps it true to what it is that you were trying to do and the lives that you are trying to impact and change. And that comes from a personal place. Do you think that the themes, therefore, that sort of engagement piece, a lot of you have used the word engagement from the children, the users of what you're trying to do, is that about trying to improve their engagement? And for many of you, that might be tangible. I think a couple of you have mentioned people not in school, people who are so disenfranchised they don't want to go. Is that a marker for each of you? Is that something that you sort of measure yourself by, re-engagement or attendance?
For us, I would say so. In a way of we try to make sure that, and this is very scary, that uh, every learner is there because they want to be on that day. So it's scary because you start the session or 5 minutes before you have no idea who's going to be joining, um, which always keeps you on your toes. But
Yeah.
in the end, people join and it's a great time. And you know that every person is there because on that day, at that time, they wanted to join and join the club. Um, So we do different things to make sure that that's the case. So we, for example, trying to let the kids know that the club is happening and let them join instead of tell the parents, because all the times like parents might push the kids. Um, we try to keep the clubs free, but it depends per context. Different clubs, different things, but as cheap as possible. So that again, it's not the parents pushing it. Oh, we paid already, so you have to go. So to really ensure that every learner is there because they want to be, and then that means that based on who's there and who's not, we know, okay, who wants to be there, who doesn't want to be there. So it's a pretty good indicator.
It's a design consideration, isn't it? Ron,
Yeah.
you've got to make effort, you've tangibly got to make it available, accessible in every sense of that. There's lots of nodding. Monal, Canopy, Nepal, similar?
Yes.
Mm.
Uh, I think I'd like to take a step back and kind of talk about why we do what we do, kind of talk about the problem a little bit so that there's more context as well. So there's a massive dropout rate of students in Nepal. About 73% of the students do not complete secondary education. And you see patterns of this from when they're ending primary school. And there are a lot of reasons for this. But there are a few major ones where we're trying to bring our intervention in. And one of them is actually lack of quality of education. So when schools and classrooms aren't built to motivate students to continue learning, they are also not motivated to stay in school. This ties to the bigger problem of economic instability in the country. We have a massive poverty rate, so families would rather have their children either go work with them to earn daily wages so they can buy food for the family, or in cases of young female students, they marry them off, so they're off the responsibility of the family. And we look at this and we think that okay, we need to support the family, but if you dig a little bit deeper, if the education system was created in a way where students enjoy learning, they would also have resistance on following what their parents say. But because the education system and the classrooms are not engaging enough, when their parents are like, okay, you know what, come with me to work so you can earn like 150 rupees, which is $1, and you can keep half of it, students are more motivated to go there than stay in their classrooms. Because one, they're not allowed to talk to their friends, which is what they essentially love to do when they're in classrooms. Two, they're not allowed to speak at all. Imagine shutting down a 12-year-old. And three, it's created in such a way that you have to just sit, listen to the teacher, do what they do, and then move on 8 classes across the day. So identifying that this, okay, is one of the root causes of why this dropout rate is happening, we designed the program around the students so that while they're doing the process of storytelling, while they're learning, they also realize that learning can be fun. And that's the pedagogy that we use, which is, I think, another thing that we need to focus on is the pedagogy of things we're doing, because assessment is important. They don't care about it. That's for us to design the program around it. What they care about is how we do it, how we interact with them. What do we talk about? So one thing for us when we're doing this assessment is not just their learning levels, but their interest as well. So if a particular student or the group of students is interested in one of the celebrities of Nepal, our responsibility is to go home and do that homework of learning everything about that celebrity so we can talk about them the next time we meet them so they can relate to us, so that it's things that they're interested in as well. So that is kind of how we think about the support as well. And at the end of the day, while child-centered learning is at the center of it, I think as an institution, as an organization, there are so many actors that you have to keep in mind as well. So sometimes child-centered learning is also a lens rather than the intervention itself as well. So when we're looking at this problem statement, there's nothing about child-centeredness, but because we looked at it from that lens, we kind of identified that, oh my God, you know what? Here is what the solution can be, instead of just blaming the policy and blaming the parents and, finding ways to give money to the families. So I think those lenses really do keep us in our toes as well. And it is changing. Like, we've been running for the last 10 years. And let me tell you, like, every 1.5 years, we're like, oh my God, there's another problem. Or, oh my, okay, this is solved. Let's move on to the next one. But the essence, I think, has to remain the same when we're doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to bring Giddy2School in because their experience will be similar and different, I'm sure.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing that, Mona. And to speak to your question, I think it is a little bit of everything, both engagement and attendance. But what we do, aside from the fact that we have independent programs for young people, through our programs, our projects, we try to use these to solve a systemic problem. And I mean systemic problem because our programs are designed in such a way that they don't just solve immediate problems. They tend to also, in the design, solve systemic problems. So, and this is what I mean. So we have the literacy club at Giddy2School, which is basically tending to the low literacy levels of students in secondary schools, primary schools, thereabout. We did it hands-off, so anybody can pick it up and just revive the learning habits in children and young people. So as they do that, it's also strengthening the school, it's strengthening the education systems, it's strengthening the mind of the learner, the psychology of learning. The school know that, yes, we should be the ones doing this, but this organization has taken it upon themselves to bring it to us, right? It's a wake-up call. Everybody is remembering what are we supposed to be doing. Okay, if we can't do that, there's an organization that's bringing it to us. Let's support them to get this done. And that's not all. In terms of, I think I did a comparative research some time ago looking at Haitians' education system and why they achieved 99% literacy rates that they do have today, which is quite impressive. And it's one of the reasons is because they prioritize hands-on skills-based learning, which is whatever it is you learn in the classroom, you get to go out there, even from the classroom, design something modeled after that, and then use it to solve a problem. So it's not far-fetched that as a secondary school student is learning physics, is learning law of thermodynamics, they can apply it to something that solves a problem in their immediate environment. And so you see a lot of Chinese products today. It's a direct representation of the education system. So what we're trying to do is we're bringing an atmosphere where if you mix sodium and an acid on a base, it gives you corresponding salt and water. So what does that tell you? In terms of industrialization, what can you do with that? In terms of knowledge industry, in terms of innovation, in terms of entrepreneurship, turning what you know to what can hand you a living or something like that, connecting a door of education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Actually, it's a big game changer for young people to solve the problem of poverty, to solve the problem of marginalization, and all of that. So when young people see that what I learn in school can actually be applied in the real sense of the thing to solve real problems, they're intrigued, they're creative, they're vibrant, they want to try things out. So I think when we are trying to move the education system from what it is to what it's supposed to be, I think there's a lot of room for growth. But then in the meantime, while the policy is not yet there to bring these things to what they're supposed to be, I think organizations like that of the one Ron is leading, like that of the one Mona is leading, like Giddy2School can take these things on and say, you know what, this is where we're supposed to be headed. This is what we're supposed to be doing, and this is how we can do it. Provide them with blueprints, piloted researches, human-centered designs, educational designs, and stuff like this, and say, you know what, let's do this. So in the end, it helps engagement because young people will come back to school. They know that they get something valuable from the system. The system is strengthened because it's no longer seen as a scam. And then every other thing around the national development, sustainable development, national prosperity, human prosperity, everything comes back flourishing. So in the long run, that is like the system that we're running with at Giddy2School. We're trying to say, you know what, education is not a scam. Perhaps we're doing something wrong. And these are the things we can start doing right. These are ways that we can start connecting the dots. Thank you.
You said wake up call. I think that's very clearly something that all of us are hoping for from the various stakeholders that are engaged in this process, to look to the future of education. It is an opportunity for a wake up call to hear examples such as the three that we have on the screen today. And I think what Giddy2School is visualizing right now is the future that you want. If I bring in Canopy Nepal and Curiosity Learning just to that point there, what do you visualize as the future with your innovation in mind? Where do you see those opportunities? What's the next step?
So the curriculum that we've built and the skills that we focus on and the intervention that we're doing is actually outlined in the Education Act of Nepal. So technically, the government of Nepal should be implementing what we're doing. And very proud to announce that we're actually working with the government to do that right now. So we are based in a federal government system, which means we have local governments who look after the education. We have 250 of those. We've been working with 10, and I think that's a great start. It's been a year. And it was a very anxious step because we're entering this system, which everybody blames, but we don't really realize that even they don't know how to do it. So what I see Canopy doing in the next 5 years is working with these 250 local governments to incorporate what they are supposed to do based on the Education Act with Canopy support. We don't want to become the system. We want to assist the system. I think in an ideal world, Canopy would not exist. Like our expertise not needed. We want the government to run it. I think that should be the goal for all nonprofits, but yeah, that's where we visualize ourselves.
Very much indeed. Ron, let's come to Curiosity Learning.
I think just real quick reflection that I was from hearing the other two speak. I found it really interesting to hear how there's so much. I feel like what we're doing is very much at the core and has so many other problems that could be solved if this is done right. Like Monal was saying around dropout rate. I never sometimes I feel like, oh yeah, I'm making kids enjoy learning more. But then back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but there are people that can't afford to go to school because they need to do this. I'm like, okay, so this is not much compared to the bigger problems. But this is kind of showing, wait, there it does also help those other big problems,
Indeed.
which I don't know, I haven't seen it in this lens yet. Um, but back to the question you were asking, the future. Um, I think it depends how far of the future. There's in in the next 5 years or so, I think the ideal what we're pushing for is to allow anyone to learn anything wherever they are and to really nurture that curiosity we're all born with. Um, and I think big key would be similar to what I was saying earlier around recognition. And I think if we're able to have learning done informally, like non-formal learning, have be recognized, um, and more child-centered learning be highly recognized without the need for um, the assessments that are traditional assessment, because I'd argue that ruins a lot of child-centered learning. Depends on how it's done. Um, if we have that, then we can have people learn anywhere, not necessarily in a school that has this type of accreditation, but I can just show, hey, I learned video editing from a video and just show a few videos and maybe land a video editor job. Because why not? You learned it, that learning was just as valuable as someone who went and learned it in a formal setting. That's the way I see it for the future. I don't know how long it's going to take, but that's the goal, at least that we're going for.
that visual piece of what the future looks like should be something that we're aiming for as quickly as possible. But of course, it has got a long-term landscape view to it as well. Ron, I think you're right. At Montessori Global, we champion everything that you've all been talking about from the earliest stage. And I think, Ron, to reflect on what you said around we're born with that curiosity, there's an opportunity, a huge opportunity to not lose it, to hang on to that desire to engage, be engaged in learning right from the word go. And we all have a job to do in that, don't we? To nurture that from the beginning. It's been thrilling to hear some of the stories from the innovations that you run today. And I say some because that's not all of it. I know there's a whole colourful background to all of these innovations, but it's been thrilling to at least open the door to some of them in this seminar today. And Jamie, I know we have a particular question from a very important person, one of the youth
Yes,
ambassadors.
thank you so much, Karen. Um, and thank you for the insightful panel discussion. We're going to now move on to kind of this like Q&A time, but first I want to introduce Deborah, who is one of our youth ambassadors who has a question for the panelists. So Deborah, welcome to the floor.
Hello, can I be heard? All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for such an inspiring and insightful discussion so far. My name is Debri, and I'm honored to be here today as a Youth Ambassador of 100. So building on Karen's earlier question about challenges, my question to all the panelists is, from your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges in implementing child-centered education, and how can young people like us play a meaningful role in helping to overcome them? Yes.
Can I start?
Yeah, of course.
I think when we think of child-centered, and I talked about this before, pedagogy plays a very big role. And in our case, so has the facilitator. So depending on who is in the ground that is interacting with the students, the outcome of the program is definitely impacted. And what has worked best for us is actually young people, because children relate to people who look like them, children relate to people who talk like them. And the only people who can do that are younger people. I talked about this earlier as well, but our team is extremely young. And I think that is our biggest strength, because that is what allows us to run the program very successfully in ground, because a student looks at you and they think of you as an elder cousin rather than a teacher. And that immediately removes that barrier between a student and a teacher, which is how things are seen in Nepal, and I think a lot of South Asian countries as well. So how young people like you can help is actually join institutions that are working with students, become a facilitator, go and work in the ground, because I think after you start running institutions and organizations, you get so caught up in just doing that you sometimes forget how to relate to younger people, and that's okay. But that's why we have other younger people that we can seek help from, and we need. So yeah, that's go in the ground and talk to the students. I think that's how you can help.
Yeah, that's great. Can we hear from the other panelists?
Okay, can I go next, Ron? That's okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mona. So I think apart from the lack of intergenerational dialogue between the older people and the younger people, which I think contextually for me, I say that it's a cultural thing, right? It's a cultural barrier where older people don't think you have an idea of what your life is supposed to be about, right? I think that they're supposed to just give you the blueprint that they have in their head, and then you should run with it. They don't think you have a vision for yourself. They don't think you should have a plan for yourself, what you want to do, and things like that. However, by Mona's talked about doing that, finding the bridge between older people and the younger people, giving them a voice, letting them know they have a voice. They should be at the center of their learning. I think on top of that list, we should also look at some of the barriers is systems bottleneck and all this bureaucratic nonsense. And I say that because typically in a school, in a day, you have a number of periods that a teacher can, engage, because you have to move to other things. There are a series of subjects that are queued up in a school, right? So if that's the case, then that means a teacher has a limited time to cover an amount of, content for that day. So the problem most of the time, because I'm also in the classroom, right? So the teacher has a goal. There are 13 weeks in a term, at least in Nigeria. And in that 13 weeks, 10 is for learning. The 3 weeks is for measurement and evaluation, recording and all of that, grading, right? Within that 10 weeks, if you're unlucky that you're teaching a subject like biology, then you have, such limited time to do so much. Now, the problem is you want me to apply something like a Montessori method, or the regular medium approach, which is like exploratory. You want them to do practicals, you want them to do field trips, you want them to do discovery learning, all in the space of 40 minutes that you have for a period in a day, right? So it's almost impossible. And to be fair with teachers, I think it's not their fault, because this is what the system has pushed down their throat to work with. So we need to start thinking about redefining what the system should look like, what the learning should look like, how to approach learning. Do we want to fix it in, learning in 40, 80 minutes and say teachers should do heaven and earth? Or do we want to give them more time, or a curriculum or contents that are better fixed to the method that can drive the learning home better for them? So you see, there are, on the part of the teachers as well, it won't be fair to keep asking these things of them when we're not considering under what circumstances are they going to be delivering, these qualities that we're asking of them. So that's also one of the challenges that I see on the grassroots level across, well, maybe across West Africa, because I'm quite, around here. Thank you.
I
Yes, thank you. Yes, Ron, go ahead.
Thank you. I really resonate with both of what was said. Especially with the thing of, I think what makes it really hard is to fit child-centered learning into a system that was really not designed for it. Like a lot of it is based around curriculum, but the second you have a curriculum with a certain content that you need to learn, that everyone needs to learn at a certain period of time, it's very hard to make that child-centered, in my mind at least. Because you're no longer asking the child what they want to learn. You already have a list of things you want them to learn. So I think that's a big challenge. And if we're gonna wait for that system to change in order to start pushing for child-centered learning, I think we're gonna have to wait a long time. So my thing of what can you do, what can we do, what can young people do, is try and, I don't know if, I'm not sure if make a new system is right, because that's a big thing, but at the same time pushing for this, I think it's not necessarily pushing for the thing you're in to change, because that's going to take a long time and might not have anything from there, at least at this stage. But making something, making something for you and your peers that you can see that it could be done in a different way based on the things in your context work or don't. And I'll add one more thing. I think a challenge is that a lot of people find issues with the current system, and then they graduate, then they go on to get a job, and then they're on to the next thing, and like, someone else will solve the next one. So I think young people who are in the system are instrumental to really pushing for that change. If you want it to happen, do it now, or else when you're done, you're going to forget about it. You're going to forget about it. You're going to go on to the next thing, do what you can to try and create something that follows your ideals, that follows your vision for what it should be.
I can add, certainly from the innovations that we've seen, there's so much amazing thought, innovation, discovery, exploration going on, largely from young people. So I think in answer to Deborah's question around what can youth do, keep involved. Keep involved. This is a highly, highly valuable profession. I know around the world it's not seen like that, and I know that there are huge challenges financially, but we here today, the audience, we know the value of education. And so I know that actually if people were to choose the career path, design the career path, as Ron says, change the system, then we collectively would be supportive of that. So please keep engaged, keep doing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the panelists. I mean, as a youth myself, I can definitely resonate with a lot of what you're saying, like the challenges. So keeping involved and young people having a voice and keeping involved is definitely the way to go. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for your question. So I'm going to bring it to the Q&A that's going on in the chat. There have been a lot of questions about teacher buy-in specifically, like in different ways, but I guess can somebody answer, I think, this question about specifically teachers feeling that child-centered learning is expensive, time-consuming, or maybe not workable for large, overcrowded rural schools specifically? How would you go about convincing teachers, ensuring buy-in, and then also ensuring implementation without constant monitoring, especially when teachers are not equally motivated? Big questions. I combined three, that's why it's so long. Who would like to start?
Okay, can I say something real quick? So I think one way to make simple teacher buy-in or to encourage teacher buy-in is to let them know how their lives can be easy when they take this approach. I mean, you don't have to do so much. You just have to set the ball rolling for the kids to explore learning. That's all. And then you sit back and record. I mean, it's so interesting. But because people, like I said, like to be in the driving seat, they want to be like an instructor, not authoritarian, instead of a facilitator. Teachers these days in 21st centuries are just supposed to be facilitators of learning. You're supposed to guide the learners to explore learning. That's it. So when I mean, if I have to present to a group of teachers to encourage buy-in, all I have to do is to explain to them, show them how it makes their life easier. Simple. Thank you.
I can add on that to a little bit. We don't work directly with teachers, but because we eventually want the system to kind of adapt the program that we're doing, we have started engaging them in the programs. And the only thing we do is we take one teacher per school, and usually the principal assigns this. We don't really intervene in that process, but we just make them sit in the classroom. That's it. And then they see how much these students engage and enjoy. And the quieter ones are the ones who are speaking and screaming and running around the classrooms. And they come to us and they're like, how do you do this? Teach us how to do it. So I think one of the ways for you to introduce, if your institution does this work and you want now to train teachers, just make them see your work. Because I think as soon as they see the outcome that you're being able to produce with like an hour of engagement, they're sold right there. And then you can then start teaching. The second, I think, is I actually want to contradict with the point that I don't think child-centered learning is expensive. I think it does take time. It takes a little bit more energy, but you don't necessarily need materials or expensive equipments to do it. I think just having, I guess, a class monitor assist you when you're running your classroom is also child-centered learning, as long as they're actively engaged when you're teaching. So I think those 2 points from me.
Thanks so much. I'm going to just build off of what you just said, because there was also another question in the chat asking if you could speak about some challenges or experiences regarding funding and logistics when implementing child-centered learning.
Can I take on that as well? So I think this is where your kind of institutional problem statement, your solution, your pathway of doing work comes in, and how you curate it. As someone who's been working in this space there are a lot of funds available, but I will also not be ignorant on the fact that funding for education has been like depleting, I think, over the years. It's not as much as a priority, and we're struggling as well to find like the right sources around it. But I think we have to do a little bit of homework. But identifying organizations and platforms like 100, I think, for an example, is a great way to again get connected to that network as well. And logistics wise, I think it's a very human-centered setting that I think that's actually at least how we approach. I don't know how about the other panelists, but as soon as we think of child-centered learning, I think of facilitators. And facilitators is a lot of human resources. That's a lot of logistics to handle. So it is a definitely a logistical heavy approach. And maybe that's something that only we do. There are other approaches that you can take as well. But yeah, if anyone else wants to add.
I'm not sure I understood the question completely, but I'll give it a try. I think the logistically the logistical challenges of child-centered learning, of implementing it, are much harder when you try to scale it. Um, like Monal was saying, like having a lot of facilitators, like having an approach that everybody understands and is aligned and in terms of maintaining quality. But I think that's one trouble that we're trying to understand. How do we grow and how do we do more of this and also maintain quality? Because we don't know exactly what's happening with the children because it's a lot less quantitative, more qualitative. So it's a big tricky one. I don't have an answer for how, but I do think that if you do make it start on a smaller scale, I think the operation is easier to get started. And then once you have it running, take it one step at a time, I guess. I don't know.
To your point, Ron, around taking it one step at a time and starting small, I think that's something to be consistent with as well, though, and especially when we're looking at quality measurements for scale, because ultimately, and we've talked about it today, the guides, the facilitators, the teachers are the ones who need perhaps a mindset shift in some spaces and an opportunity to, and Monal said this earlier, she talked about watching, observing. Well, there's observational value in allowing that mindset shift for the educator, for the guide, for the facilitator, because what is truer than child-centered practice than observing the child? And those things are really important for keeping the quality going as well. And that's moment by moment, isn't it? A, it's free, and B, it's in the second, it's in those moments of educational value. So there is something about staying close, I think, to the minutiae of what we're doing as well. And that's easier for buy-in potentially. So I think it's part of the puzzle, isn't it? It's part of the puzzle to keep close to the detail of something as accessible as observing the child in front of you.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to close off this conversation. Thank you so much to the panelists and Karen for facilitating this conversation. It's been a real pleasure to hear your thoughts and your experiences. I'm sure that everyone has also enjoyed hearing them. Just to close off, I want to remind everyone that this event was to launch the report, Spotlight on Child-Centered Learning, which features 14 selected innovations. So these are just 3 of them, but there are others as well that you can hear about in the report. So if you haven't already, the report was launched yesterday. So go onto our website and you can download the report and learn more about them, and as well as some definitions and insights that the 100 research team has found in conducting this Spotlight project. But yeah, that's, if you have any other questions, feel free to email the 100 research team. I think Megan will put the email in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much.